tell you some more, but I'm glad he's here because he operates a heating and cooling business. And so, without further ado, here's Glenn.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So as Bernard mentioned, I've been in skilled trades pretty much my whole life. I am currently a business owner and operator for heating and cooling, which, if you don't know, consists of furnaces, air conditioners, water heaters, boilers, also standby generators, so just bear that in mind. But I have the privilege of taking on this trade by choice. I really enjoy the work that I do. I come from a background of, oh, I'm sorry, 1 second.
I should have asked for that earlier. We'll make sure we get his cards.
Yeah, we're just asking for it.
Yeah, I already know what's going to happen, so I'm make sure you get his cards.
Can you start over here first?
Just because you asked, I can start over there first. I sure can.
So, as I mentioned, I've been in skilled trades pretty much my whole life. I come from my father who retired from GM and carried on the rental property business himself. And of course, I learned a lot from him, worked with him. And then when I became, got into the industry myself, I started out as a carpenter, a licensed carpenter, but I found more joy specifically in heating and cooling, and so I followed that. I deal with a small business with a small crew, but we mainly focus on new installs, as far as installing furnaces and air conditioners and water heaters. We do service them as well, but we mainly focus on install, so just keep that in mind. But like I said, I come from this area. I've been in this area my whole life. As Bernard mentioned, I've been around here, so I'm familiar with the community, and I have a great love for Flint, and that's why I continue to do this business here. So, not really a person of many words, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Like I say, this is just a very, I don't know if I can describe it correctly, but I'm a very straightforward person. So I generally try and treat everyone the way I would love to see people treat my parents and my grandparents and my family. So that comes to making sure that you get what you need, and as far as evaluating your needs and your repairs and evaluating if there is a need for a new install, because I'm a person who wants to see good quality, but at the same time, I want to see a good deal. And so, because that's what I want, that's what I try and make sure that everyone else has. I try and get the best deal for what I view in this community as my family. So, that's pretty much it. And if you have any questions, oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Are you finding that more and more people are going to the waterless tanks, and do you do anything with the waterless tanks?
So with tankless water heaters, I think that they can be a good idea for the right circumstance, and I do see some ask for it, but I evaluate if that's a good idea for them, because tankless water heaters, you can get a rebate, of course. You can get a consumer's energy rebate, so that helps to, take down some of the price. And then, especially if it's a larger household, or it's like a 3 or 4 bedroom house or something like that, or you have a household with a jetted tub or something like that where it uses a lot of hot water, those can be extremely useful, and you'll see people with bigger households take advantage of it because, typically when everyone's using hot water, they're using it at the same time in the morning when they're getting ready. No one wants to run out, no one wants to wait for their siblings or their children to use it up and then not have any. So everyone uses it at the same time, and that's where I see a big push. In smaller neighborhoods with smaller houses, not so much. And part of that is because I do perhaps discourage it just because it's not as much of a need. It can be energy efficient because you're not heating the water all day, but if it's for a smaller household, it just may not be a need for it. Now, like I said, that's what me just being honest about my view on it. So, and I just try and help people with that.
Have you noticed an increase in electric water heaters?
I don't think I'll ever see an increase in electric water heaters. Electric water heaters are inefficient. Even with the solar panels, they're inefficient in how they perform because, like I said, when a household and everyone's using hot water at the same time, they don't recoup as fast. So you're waiting longer for you to get that hot water back. And then on top of it, you know, the price of electricity has not went down. So I don't see an increase in electric water heaters because they just don't serve as nice or as good as a tankless water heater or even a power vent water heater. The electric water heater is just, maybe once the solar panel industry has grown and everyone's running off a solar panel, I would see it then, but we don't see a lot of solar panels, especially we're in Michigan, so the solar power hasn't quite boomed as much as it would perhaps down south, so.
Yes, I've got a question regarding boilers. Did I understand it correctly that you not only install, but you also repair?
Yes, we do, yeah. Did you have a specific question about the repair? Oh, okay, we'll talk about it. All right.
Boiler people are hard to find. So I'll just add, go ahead.
You got a recommendation for preventive maintenance for them tankless water heaters?
I do encourage that they be flushed or cleaned every year. Most people, when they get it installed, get a brand new one, it's out of sight, out of mind. So they don't think about the fact that they do need to be flushed because it can have corrosion buildup and things like that. And it's just recommended from the manufacturer. Sometimes you have to flush them and have a record of it being flushed in order to maintain the warranty that comes with it. Because a lot of people think, you know, when you get a warranty on something, it's automatic, the time is automatic. But with those warranties come stipulations that you maintain them. Same thing I mentioned about standby generators. You have to get the oil changes properly. You know, there's things that come with, those stipulations that come with those brands to maintain those warranties. And so sometimes flushing it every year can be one of those stipulations. And also too, it just helps to keep them lasting longer. And that's not just with tankless water heaters. I mean, with regular tank water heaters, you want those flushed as well. Because if you ever see an old water heater and you're getting rid of it, you gotta drain that old one. The water's flowing out super slow because it's got corrosion and rust on the bottom that no one ever flushed. And if you were flushing it regularly, it would have lasted longer. So there are things that I do encourage people to do because if I'm installing something, I take pride in it. I've taken pride in it. It's like a shiny new toy to me, and I'm gonna hate to see it not taken care of down the road. So I'm gonna give you a list of things to make sure it can look shiny and new and perform like that 15, 20 years down the road.
I guess what my real question was, how is that in comparison to a normal one? Of course, you gotta flush them occasionally, but would you say the frequency is the same, more frequent or less frequent?
If I were to go according to manufacturer recommendations, the tank water heaters have to be flushed more often than the tankless water heaters. Tankless water heaters you can flush every year and you will be fine. It depends as far as the tank water heaters, but typically you would flush those 2 to 3 to 4 times a year, depending on if, now it's much faster, I will say that, to flush a tank water heater is much faster, but it depends on if you have city water or well water, because well water will eat away at pretty much all your plumbing. And so that is one where you would need to flush it more often, but it's much faster to do. It's, you know, very simple to do, but the process for a tankless water heater will take longer, but it is a need, especially if you got an investment in a tankless water heater, you paid more for it and you want to see it last.
So you're telling me if it's popping and stuff, it's not good?
There may be an issue or two there, so you definitely want to make sure and check it out.
So for it to start popping, how do you think, how deep is that sediment on top of that tank? I mean, inside of that tank typically?
It's hard to reference how deep that sediment is, but you'll tell just when you're flushing it because you'll open that valve on the bottom and you know how much water pressure should be coming out. And if it's coming if more pressure is coming out the top when you turn on the faucet than out the bottom where you're flushing the tank out, you know the buildup is way too much and it should have been done sooner. But still, don't hesitate to do it now because you still gotta do what you can to keep it lasting.
We got a question here.
So one of the houses I have has a pretty old furnace, probably like 50, 60 years old.
It's not an octopus, is it?
Huh?
It's not an octopus, is it?
Oh my God.
Or well,
Is it like this big with a bunch of things on it?
yeah.
It's an
But it
octopus.
runs great. At what point should I replace that? Like, if it's running and it's continuing to go, like, is it worth it?
Okay, so if you have one that old, I can already tell you it's not energy efficient. So, and
But they don't break.
they last as far as you can see. And the reason I say that is because those older units have old heat exchangers. And so what comes into play is, of course, carbon monoxide poisoning from having cracks in the heat exchangers. And those are not always things that are visible. And the reason they're not visible is because when they have hairline cracks, you don't see them until they heat up. And when the heat exchanger heats up, the crack opens and releases the carbon monoxide. So having something that old in itself is just dangerous. And that's not me trying to sell you a new furnace, that's just letting you know the conditions of something that old. Don't get me wrong, sometimes they used to use a much thicker steel when they did those heat exchangers, so it's thicker and it lasts longer, but that rust is starting to eat through, especially after all that heat from it. So, like I said, you're gonna get by because it may just continue running, but it doesn't mean it's continuing to run safely.
I finally had to replace one of those, and it wasn't because it went bad and stopped working. It's because it started limiting out because there was 5 squirrels inside of it. The squirrels got me for a new good one.
Yep. Seen a lot of different animals in these systems, so the whole forest really, so I get it, from squirrels to owls and a number of different things, so I get that too. But if you have something that old, like I say, it is running, but just be careful. Of course, putting up some carbon monoxide detectors would really help. Those aren't the cure-all because they can't always pick up what's going on, but if you have something that old, at least do that so that if those alarms do go off, then you know there's a possibility of a cracked heat exchanger and it would need to be replaced.
And would you just recommend, like, getting it checked out annually to make sure that that's not happening, just to confirm? And so if it is fine, then are you saying I should just keep it? Or?
Because he's not paying the bill.
Yeah, I'm not paying the bill, I'm not, like, I obviously don't want somebody to get hurt, right?
Older furnaces have a number, but this is just one of the main ones. I mean, they have a number, because older furnaces like that, something that old probably has a running pilot. It probably doesn't have a flame sensor, so when that pilot goes out, it continues to release gas unless, someone just notices it because they came down into the basement. So there's a number of safety protocols that are on furnaces now that are not on those furnaces. And a lot of times you'll get by, but sometimes these house fires come from stuff like a system that old. Heat exchanger is just a big one because of carbon monoxide poisoning, but like I say, another example is it having a running pilot with no flame sensor, no thermocouple, so it doesn't pick up when the pilot goes out, so it continues to release gas until it becomes a danger. It's more so a danger for a propane fuel furnace than it is a natural gas furnace, so it just depends on the area. But like I said, you can get by. As a professional, I just can't encourage it. So.
That answers my question.
Great. Any other questions here? Yeah. Like I say, it's been pretty informative because I'm still stuck on the fact that he said I'm supposed to be flushing my hot water tank 3 or 4 times a year. I almost feel embarrassed because look,
I've done mine in 6 years.
I don't know. Yeah. And I know.
Set it and forget it, man.
Seriously.
And I know all you guys are familiar with this area, so you're familiar with the water we've had and the effects that it can have on the plumbing. So of course, that has an effect on the water heater too, and what can build up down there. So everything, the water, the chemicals that we don't think about, and the materials these systems.
What's your thoughts on anode rods? Because I'm a guy who I take it out, I chop it off, I put the plug back in.
The thought on what now?
Anode rods.
It's the rod that goes inside the water heater, but
Makes my water stink. And isn't that releasing like some metals into my water that I shouldn't be consuming? I like to drink my warm shower water, man.
I can't say that it's releasing anything unless it's 50 years old. But it is it serves a purpose that I think all of them should have. I won't say it's an inconvenience because you can always replace it with a new one, you know, so, and still maintain the tank. So if it gets to that point, then it can be a simple fix to just replace the rod rather than replacing the
But
water.
then my water stinks again.
Well, you may have to have the water tested itself, and we're familiar with that as well.
I think one of the biggest things that he said in his speech, and I think a lot of people picked up on him, is he said, small business, small crew. And for anybody in here that's ever gotten a quote from a big business with lots of crews for a furnace, you know, like you felt like, oh my gosh, I don't have that much into this house. And furnaces, they should not be $12,000 for a furnace, but you know, little old ladies, Howland Heating and Cooling, new furnace, $12,000. So just make sure you got a good guy, local, who's taking care of you and not trying to buy themselves a house in Florida and a house on Lake Fenton.
So, you know,
What would a 80,000 BTU, 80% furnace for a typical 1,000 square foot ranch run brand new?
okay, to be honest, that's a huge furnace for that size house, but
There's no insulation, man.
yeah, that's a house that has no R13 whatsoever in those walls.
Right furnace, what would that run?
For 1,000 square foot, you know, you'd be looking closer to a 60,000 BTU. You could actually get by with even smaller than that, but I just want to encourage you because we can get some bitter weeks in the wintertime. Just off the top of my head, and oh, I didn't mention this, but my brand is Rheem. So you're probably familiar with that brand from the water heaters at Home Depot. So they do manufacture furnaces as well. They are great systems. They have a new model out, that's the Endeavor, which allows, doesn't matter to you guys, but we get to program the furnace with our phones rather than switching dip switches down there and crawling on our hands and knees. But they are great systems. I would say for a house that size, a 60,000 BTU furnace, and you said an 80%er rather than an energy efficient
Take your
one?
pick, whatever you would prefer to put in.
Honestly, I prefer
We don't-
energy. Oh.
We don't pay the bill.
I encourage energy. Well, you know, I encourage energy efficient because I want you to get the most out of a system. Period. And those ones, especially if you're going with like a two-stage, you can. Well, all
We're all balling in a budget.
Yeah, you don't know how to budget. Okay, so we're gonna go with the 80%er. You roughly off the top of my head, you'd be looking in the 4,000 range. Now that's my price. I'm familiar with the other companies in the area and their prices, and I try and make sure that my price is under theirs. I have lower overhead because I'm not, like he said, I don't have to fund certain things that they make sure that you fund when you buy from them, and I'm not trying to do that. So.
Is the 80 pluses going out? I heard they're all going to high efficiency. You're getting harder to find the 80 pluses.
No, the supply of them is always there. It's just a matter of people discouraging it because they want you to go with the energy efficient furnace. I mean, just as a president, yes, we want to see you use a more efficient furnace. That's just.
But it's more maintenance on a 90 plus. You gotta clean them every year versus the 80 plus. You have to clean them as often as what the rule was.
Well, they're both supposed to be cleaned every year, so that's.
But you know, the 8 to 90 plus, you're supposed to do 94, whatever it is now.
We only clean them when they're broke. And those high efficiencies,
That's
those
true.
high efficiencies break more.
That's true. Most people, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, so they also don't maintain it. But all systems that, if you're buying an appliance, most likely it needs, I don't care if it's a stove or a refrigerator, most likely it does need some level of maintenance. Most people, when they think about a refrigerator, they think about cleaning it out to make sure it looks good when they're putting their groceries. They don't think about cleaning the coil. Yeah, the coil behind it is doing the same thing as the coil when you're air conditioning. So though every appliance you have needs a certain level of maintenance.
But you remember,
Hey guys,
we have tenants that we can't get into. They don't allow us to come in and do the maintenance like we should because they wanna.
Yes, and they're hiding things that they don't want you to know about. Yep.
You said they won't let them in.
I make a regular basis to go change my filters every 6 months and tell them that I gotta come in to look at them and maintain them and check it out. So I do a walkthrough and I can trick them and I'll change it to furnace filter.
And that's a great way to do it as far as getting in. Even if you have, a contractor just coming in to clean the air conditioner, clean the furnace, and then you just make an appointment where you're coming in with
Behind-
exactly. So,
They always got something their eyes show, like you see that animal or something.
but maintain, and you can let the householders know that it has to be routinely maintained in order to maintain the warranty. Yeah, so when they come down the road and say, I don't want anybody in my house, it's like, well, I need to maintain the warranties on the appliances that the house came with. So that's the easy way to, yeah, so that's the easy way to keep it going.
So what kind of warranty do you offer on
On a new install, so for the 80%ers, they come with a 20-year warranty on the heat exchanger, and they come with a 10-year warranty on all other parts. And then there comes with a 2-year labor warranty. Because just keep in mind, this is why you want to go with a more, I'll tell you this is why it's important that you choose a brand that's reliable, because they'll tell you, oh, it comes with a 10-year warranty, 20-year warranty, even the Ring comes with a lifetime heat exchanger warranty. But the thing is, you missed that little part where it's how long is the labor warranty? Because the manufacturer will provide the parts, but you still got to have someone put it on, and the manufacturer will only give those parts for free to a licensed contractor. So keep in mind, you want to go with a brand that's reliable so that you don't have to utilize that labor warranty, because, like I say, you go with a cheaper brand, yeah, they don't mind throwing you a million parts to keep it going, but you're still gonna have to pay someone, so you're still coming out of pocket to come replace those parts. The Ring comes with a lifetime heat exchanger warranty on the 90%ers, and it comes with also a 10-year warranty on all other parts, and then of course I do 2-year labor warranty.
How many year labor warranty?
2 years.
Okay.
An air central air for a 700, 800 square foot house. What should that cost me?
Honestly, that's probably the smallest level I would ever do, and those would be, I would go with a 2-ton. Like I say, just off the top of my head, for a ream of 13 seer, once again, you're looking at the 4,000 range. I mean, maybe a little bit more because the line set's longer or some other small detail that affects it, but generally speaking, you're looking at the 4,000 range for a 2-ton AC.
AC is gonna cost more than the heat?
Same.
No, I said the same for the 60,000, 80% or furnace. And keep in mind, Ream is the brand that I carry, but of course, like all the other contractors, we have access to the other brands. So if you have a brand preference, speak up and say, hey, I've dealt with this brand my whole life and I want to go with that brand. Some people are like, I just want to go with Goodman because it's cheaper. Me, if I go with a Goodman and it's cheaper than what I pay for a Ring, I don't mind going. I'll give you the warning that it's not as good a brand, but I will give you whatever the price difference is, I will pass along and go ahead and get you a Goodman if that's what you prefer. But I will give you the warning that it's not as good a brand as other, such as Ring or other brands. So, and like I said, that's just me telling you the truth about how we get the equipment and how we do things. So, and like I said, I just want to see everybody get a good deal and get taken care of. And I have to remember I'm talking to a group that's not concerned with the heating bill. So, because I'm, like I said, all about the efficiency. So,
Thank you.
Last question for you. So if I have a tankless hot water heater already, never hooked it up, and I called you, would you hook up something that's already purchased, or it has to be purchased directly through you?
I would install it. But the warranty may play a difference because it's been sitting in your garage for a few years.
Just a month.
I'm just giving you a detail that I can't back the warranty because Reem looks at it like, she had bopped it around when she moved it from house to house until she decided to install it. So it does play an effect on the warranty. But yes, I don't mind doing that.
So, I don't know, it's kind of sobering for me because I'm still hearing a lot of elements. Things that are standing out the most to me is not so much the cost of getting a new unit. I think I'm finally at a stage where I like to put new tires on my car. I remember years ago when I go buy Brandon's and just throw a used one on and keep rolling. But like that was the next level of life when I just started buying a whole set of new ones. And same thing with furnaces and water heaters. because I don't want to have to think about it again and the importance of getting good product, working with a good contractor. I don't have to think about it anymore. And I guess hopefully many of you are also picking up on some of the subtle nuances I did. Preventative maintenance. You named a number of appliances and pieces of equipment that I just throw it in there, I assume it's good. I'm barely now at a stage where I'll drop off filters to a tenant or go in and check. But like it was said earlier, it's not till there's a problem that we're getting the furnace cleaned, or it's not till there's a problem that it's like, oh yeah, and this filter's the same one from 2021, that we're like, let's go ahead and tighten it up. So I hope many of you that are here are picking up on the importance of the simple things that, yes, are tedious now, but actually can save you a furnace or another appliance later. You said something earlier, and I'm going to give Scott a second to come on up. We're thankful for our vendors. We're thankful for the vendors that support this organization. Many of them have not only supported by sharing their knowledge, and I think in some cases being a little bit more transparent when they come out to service us. But it's important when they do so, we got to also always be reminded, I know we're squeezing every penny, every dime. I know we're skilled negotiators, and if you give me an inch, I'm going to take it. But we also got to have a balance of how we can allow them to still make a good living, to stay in business, and be around for us next year when we need them again. I have Scott come up. Scott did something awesome with us. That neighborhood cleanup we did April 22nd. Thank you again to those of you who came out. We'll have some more coming up soon. With Scott and Andrew, they came out, and for the sake of that event, man, they volunteered, brought equipment, brought some major stuff to help us make an impact. And yet, I want to make sure he gets a chance to kind of share some more about his business, which is different than when he volunteers.
Good afternoon. I'm Scott from ASB Lawn Care. I'm not very good to get up in front of people, but I'll give it a try. So I've been in business for 40 years doing lawn care in Genesee County. So, you know, life has changed over the 40 years. So I handed over to my son Andrew's lawn care now. I've kind of got out of it, but I quit every day with him because I work with him. He won't let me leave, but I'm still, because we can't find employees. You know, in this business, you can't find reliable employees that know how to even run a weed whacker. So when we do, to even put down mulch, we got to pay them $25, $30 an hour to put down mulch. So we are not making that kind of money. So we're paying more for equipment now. We're paying more for gas, oil changes. So people want us to come in and do one mow for $35. We can't do that anymore. Our minimum is just for one mow $100, because I've had a lot of people call me from here and want me to show up for one mow. If I come in and mow your lawn and it's 4 foot tall and I catch something that I've never mowed your lawn before, I'm tearing up a $300 spindle, which I'm giving up for my real customer that pays me all summer for 6 months. So my point of standing up here, when I'm not the cheapest person, I will never be the cheapest person out here in Genesee County. And when you call me, I'll be there in 20 minutes. But I'm not going to show up for $35. I'm not the $35, $40 man. My minimum on a third acre right now to drop my tailgate is $40. So, and we own Bobcats. We have like over 150,000 in equipment. We fully insured. We're fully covered. But I'm in the book. A lot of people's called me. I just don't want a negative response from everybody saying, Scott and Andrew are way too high, but I'm not the cheapest, but I'm just letting you guys know. I'm reliable. When you guys call me, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Like, I went and did a job. I was way too high for the gentleman to clean up his yard and his sheds and stuff, but I was there in 20 minutes. He complimented me and said, thank you for showing up, but he didn't like my price. But I won't be the cheapest, but I am good. I am good at what I do.
Reference Henry.
Well, Henry, I shout out to him. He's the greatest guy ever. He is the best. He takes care of me.
He knows that.
But you still charge me too much.
Oh, but he is my favorite. I love him dearly. As in, he takes care of me whenever I need something. He pays me well, and I take care of his properties, a few of them. Does he complain? Yes. But he still loved me, and he still will complain because.
Well, I put new tires on my car. I remember years ago when I go buy Brandon's and just throw a used one on and keep rolling. I felt like that was the next level of life when I should start buying a whole set of new ones. And same thing with furnaces and water heaters, because I don't want to have to think about it again, and the importance of getting good product, working with a good contractor. I don't have to think about it anymore. And I guess hopefully many of you are also picking up on some of the subtle nuances I did. Preventative maintenance. You named a number of appliances and pieces of equipment that I just throw it in there, I assume it's good. I'm barely now at a stage where I'll drop off filters to a tenant or go in and check. But like it was said earlier, it's not till there's a problem that we're getting the furnace cleaned, or it's not till there's a problem that it's like, oh yeah, and this filter's the same one from 2021, that we're like, let's go ahead and tighten it up. So I hope many of you that are here are picking up on the importance of the simple things that, yes, are tedious now, but actually can save you a furnace or another appliance later. You said something earlier, and I'm going to give Scott a second to come on up. We're thankful for our vendors. We're thankful for the vendors that support this organization. Many of them have not only supported by sharing their knowledge, and I think in some cases being a little bit more transparent when they come out to service us. But it's important when they do so, we got to also always be reminded, I know we're squeezing every penny, every dime. I know we're skilled negotiators, and if you give me an inch, I'm going to take it. But we also got to have a balance of how we can allow them to still make a good living, to stay in business, and be around for us next year when we need them again. I have Scott come up. Scott did something awesome with us. That neighborhood cleanup we did April 22nd. Thank you again to those of you who came out. We'll have some more coming up soon. But Scott and Andrew, they came out, and for sake of that event, man, they volunteered, brought equipment, brought some major stuff to help us make an impact. And yet, I want to make sure he gets a chance to kind of share some more about his business, which is different than when he volunteers.
Good afternoon. I'm Scott from ASB Lawn Care. I'm not very good to get up in front of people, but I'll give it a try. So I've been in business for 40 years doing lawn care in Genesee County. So life has changed over the 40 years. So I handed it over to my son, Andrew's lawn care. I kind of got out of it, but I quit every day with him because I work with him. He won't let me leave, but I'm still, because we can't find employees. In this business, you can't find reliable employees that know how to even run a weed whacker. So when we do, they even put down mulch. We got to pay them $25, $30 an hour to put down mulch. So we are not making that kind of money. So we're paying more for equipment now. We're paying more for gas, oil changes. So people want us to come in and do one mow for $35. We can't do that anymore. Our minimum is just for one mow, $100, because I've had a lot of people call me from here and want me to show up for one mow. If I come in and mow your lawn and it's 4 foot tall and I catch something that I've never mowed your lawn before, I'm tearing up a $300 spindle, which I'm giving up for my real customer who pays me all summer for 6 months. So my point of standing up here, when I'm not the cheapest person, I will never be the cheapest person out here in Genesee County. And when you call me, I'll be there in 20 minutes. But I'm not going to show up for $35. I'm not the $35, $40 man. My minimum on a third acre right now to drop my tailgate is $40. So, and we own Bobcats. We have like over $150,000 in equipment. We fully insured. We're fully covered. But I'm in the book. A lot of people's called me. I just don't want a negative response from everybody saying, Scott and Andrew are way too high, but I'm not the cheapest, but I'm just letting you guys know. I'm reliable. When you guys call me, I'll be there in 20 minutes. Like I went and did a job. I was way too high for the gentleman to clean up his yard and his sheds and stuff, but I was there in 20 minutes. he complimented me and said, thank you for showing up, but he didn't like my price, but I won't be the cheapest, but I am good. I am good when I go. Henry. Oh, Henry, I shout out to him, he's the greatest guy ever. He is the best, he takes care of me.
But you still charge me too much.
Oh, but he is my favorite. I love him dearly, as in, he takes care of me whenever I need something. He pays me well, and, I take care of his properties, a few of them. Does he complain? Yes. But he still loves me, and he still will complain because that's how rich he gets richer. I'm not getting richer now in this business.
I think what he's kind of saying though is, it's kind of like the stage led. I remember pulling in, I'm like, I need one used tire. And now you buy a new set.
Yeah.
Once you're sick of chasing crackheads for a $25 lawnmower, call in.
Sounds like a theme for today's meeting. When you're ready to graduate to, say it again? Oh,
He's in the
how
newsletter.
do we make these contact with ASB Lawn Care? How would they do that? Now, I'll say this, you'll find their information in your newsletter. So how many people here are members of the Landlord Association? Wonderful. We're thankful that you're here. I'm hoping that you're getting your newsletters regularly.
It's right here in the newsletter.
There it is, because they're getting the newsletter.
That's how you get a hold of them.
That's it. So if you're a member, you should be getting it in the newsletter. Yeah. Just 3? I know we had at least had 5 not yet members. Come on. Just 3? Yes, the newsletter comes in the mail. If you've not been receiving your newsletter and you are a member, I encourage you just to double check with Amanda before we leave today to make sure that we've got your address correct. God forbid we've got the wrong, zip code on there or something of that nature. You want to get that corrected. For those of you that have yet to become members, today is a great day to do it. Even as you're listening, I'm hoping that you're hearing, seriously, Lavelle, that was way more than I expected. I appreciate it. Again, I'm having more thoughts than I want to about maintenance that I'm not doing. That's probably gonna kick me in the butt later if something breaks and I didn't do what I was supposed to do. These little quirky things you're learning here today, the membership with the Landlord Association is probably the cheapest, most expensive, but most power-packed investments you'll make as a landlord in Genesee County. I was sharing with someone earlier today that this ain't Dallas, Texas. This ain't, wherever in California. This isn't even, Grand Rapids. This is Flint. And so to read somebody else's book, watch somebody else's blog about how to get things done as a landlord, as an investor, as a flipper, as a wholesaler, it sounds good in those other cities, but there's no better place than right here to find out how to do the things the best way in this environment. So at $199 for an annual membership is extraordinary, and what's super sweet, that's what you get it for online. But if you were to make today the day that you make that investment, it's $147 if you were to make that decision today. So you have a sheet on your table. I just want to encourage you to go ahead, if you've not already, there's a sheet where you can register today to become a member. I see this gentleman, Don, has one in front of him. I think, Don, you recently became a member? That's good stuff, man. Appreciate it. That's great. So take a moment, get that completed, get that turned in, and we're here to be a support. There's some of you that I get texts from every once in a while because you're like, hey, I need a roofer. I need so-and-so that does this. Or I'll text someone else and do the same. Because I don't have time and you don't have time to be wrestling with some knuckleheads. It sounds good, but it's worth nothing when it comes to fixing on your house. And sometimes those quick conversation referrals make your life so much easier. And so with that being said, we're going to have a few of our members come up now for somewhat of a question and answer and a real brass tacks conversation about when the rubber meets the road, how do we find success here in Genesee County?
All right. So I'd like to get Henry, Ryan Scully, Mike, and Bernard. So our speaker literally had a dumpster fire. I actually mean that in literal sense. So he's not going to make it. And we're going to do a little round table. And we do want to start this with, if you guys have any questions, problems, concerns that you guys are dealing with in the real estate business right now. What are your issues? Does anybody in here have any questions that they'd like to, so we can get started? And then we have a few bullet points we can talk on after we get through some questions.
You know, and as we do that, I'm curious, just as we get started, we got to show of hands how many people are members. How many people here have 10 or more houses or properties that you own? How many here? At least 3. How many have at least 1? How many here are in some season of, hey, I used to have some, I'm getting back into it, or I'd like to get started, and right now I may not have any properties, but I'd like to. Who did I not catch? Are there wholesalers here? Is there another segment that we did not capture? Yeah, aspiring investors. Did we cover everybody? Who here is not going to raise your hand regardless? Okay, thank you.
You guys have any
no
questions?
Yeah, I got a question. I'm having a hard time trying to find out how to use some of my rentals for Section 8. I mean, I've called City Hall, County, called Congressman Gilden's office, gone down to the office on Richfield Road, nobody's there. Everything goes to voicemail, nobody calls back. But are there special requirements to rent a house to Section 8 individuals? Using the right terminology, I mean, does the house have to get inspected? Do you get on some kind of list? Do they call you, hey, we got somebody in the house? Anybody?
So, I think we've talked about this before, and you know, everything has its season, as the old folk songs used to say. There was a time when we couldn't rent anything to anybody, and Section 8 was just golden. You loved it. It meant that once a year you had to do an inspection and sign a new with the tenant. The problem is Section 8 puts an additional burden on you that you don't have with your regular tenant. You don't have to go through an annual inspection with your regular tenant that you have to with the Section 8. And as I remember it, about 3 or 4 years ago, they had asked me to put brand new windows in different units, you know. And I thought that was just unfair of the government to ask me to do something like that when I owned the property and I was happy with the windows. Why would the government tell me different? We're in a different market now where there's not enough houses to go around. I mean, we've got hundreds of houses and I got one apartment that's available. I'm not saying everybody's paying, but I'm saying that I don't have a lot of houses available like when I used to desire Section 8. And so I could care less about Section 8. It just is more requirements, more restrictions, more problems than I would have for the average guy I meet on the street. You have to remember that the government does pay you whatever they agree to pay you, $600 a month or $800 a month or whatever the number is. Problem is that we used to have a big problem with a tenant paying his small portion, his $100 a month or his $150 a month. You always wind up in this quandary. You evict a guy when Section 8 is paying you, because the rules of Section 8 say that if you evict a guy, you got to send them a copy of the notice and they immediately stop paying you. So it just gives you dilemmas that you don't have just dealing with a free market that we face every day. And I would tell you that it's unusual for somebody to want Section 8 today. Not that there's anything wrong with it. It's just that you're buying into a situation where you're not guaranteed the tenant's portion, and you're guaranteed that once a year they're going to come out here and spend some of your money doing repairs that you may or may not want to do. I remember them coming to me, telling me to fix the tenant's stove. You know, what do I want to fix the tenant's stove for? You know?
I'm gonna add to his also that what ends up happening is we take and you guys hear me here? What they end up doing is they end up making you sign a contract with Section 8. That's the first problem that I have. The second problem that I have is we're real heavy in Beecher, and up there, they tried to rent restrict me. We were advertising a house for $750, and they told me they'd only give me $700, and they wouldn't give me the $750. And then all the houses that they were pulling from were my houses. Their entire list that they pulled from, 17 houses at this price, were my houses. So when you go and you apply, or when you go and you do that route, you're getting stuck in some contract, in some loop that really doesn't serve you as a landlord. My rule of thumb is 10%. I want to be fair. So I ran this for the last 15 years, and I run 10% of my rental portfolio runs in Section 8. If it bumps out, then I put another one in. But when you run an ad, they call you. You don't have to do nothing special, they call you. There's people out there that I know that are buying houses, and I think one group is up to 100, 120 houses now, and they only rent to Section 8. That's their whole thing, is they only rent, they will not rent to anybody else. I've told him 100 times not to do it, but for the same reason he does. But I just disagree with that. I think you should be out there on the open market, allowing other people to pay.
You know, to balance this just slightly, because candidly, I don't know your motivation for why you want to consider it. I'm confident, and this is not a plug, but it will be today. What's the name of your management company?
PMI.
So Mike operates PMI, Property Management Inc.
Ministry.
They do have someone, an administrator at his office that does engage Section 8. I'm sure, without any qualms, you probably give a call and they might tell you who to call if you're dead set on wanting to pursue that, and at least find the source.
What Mike was saying now, Section 8 people, the tenants that are qualified with a voucher, is that what they call it?
Yep.
They call you.
We don't call anybody. We used to be able to go down. Henry runs a management company, I run a management company. We used to be able to go down and put a little ad up in their little hallway, 3-bedroom house, blah, 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 and you get 50 calls. Now, you just put your ad on whatever platform you use, and they call you. I promise you, at least 30% of who's calling you has a voucher.
You have to remember that the way you qualify for Section 8 is to stand in line. It doesn't mean they have good credit. It doesn't mean they have a good history. It doesn't mean anything. It means they stood in line maybe for an hour to fill out an application 3 years ago, and now their name has come up for a little more extra money than the average poor person would get. And that's all you're getting with it.
Not just that. This is my biggest problem. So my requirements for Section 8 is a little different. I require them to pay the first month's rent and the deposit, and they have to come up with that up front. Then Section 8 picks up after that. I don't know anybody here that has, I don't think anybody here does that. Because what happens is they move in, they have to put the stove in there, they have to put a refrigerator in there before Section 8 approves it. After the stove and refrigerator are in and working, then the inspection happens. After the inspection happens, we get a lovely letter, how many bad things are wrong with the house, and we go and we fix those things. After we fix those things, then you get the okay that you're going to get your Section 8 money. However long that takes is up to you. After the last okay, they have up to 90 days to pay you. I've had them run out past the 90 days, and then I've called and they said, oh, we don't have anything from them. And it just dead ended. It just dead ended right there. Now, I'm looking at a tenant that has a stove and a refrigerator in there, saying that they moved into my house. And lucky me, got to go stand in front of Miss, what's her name in Mount Morris, the judge, and say, Judge, this is what happened. And she said, well, you let them move into the house. And that's a whole nother problem. And that's exactly what happened to me. So, from that day on, I went, this is what I'm doing. I'm charging first month, I'm charging deposit, I explain everything to them. We have a letter that explains everything. They sign the letter, and I think this is against Section 8's rules because there's a rule in there that you have to follow, and it's totally against the rules, and I don't even care. I'll let them come after me because I'm never getting stuck like that in front of a judge again. So I caution everybody, when you are playing with Section 8, if you've got one house and you're depending on that income, you better be darn careful. And you better know you better read that contract that you're signing beforehand. The other thing is, mind you, these people are getting rent, right? Because what reason? Anybody know? Anybody?
They stood in line.
They stood in line and what? They ain't got money to pay rent, right? So what happens when they break the window? Who pays for it? Whoever said you do is the exact right.
You do. My state won't pay for it?
They don't pay for none of that. They pay
I've
your
replaced
rent
the same
and that's
smoke
it.
detector so many times.
You ain't getting nothing other than your rent. So if you have a 4-bedroom house means you're gonna have multiple kids, right? You're getting great money. I'm making $800, $900 a month in the city. They just broke a window. They broke 3. Now you got a $1,000 bill that way. Who's paying it? Oh, and by the way, you're the bad landlord. So be careful when you play with Section 8. It's not a bad thing.
And I know with Mischief, like in a regular house, you send a 30, like most of my tenants are expired leases month to month. I sent a letter, we just sent a bunch of letters last week raising rents. You can't, Mischief, you can't send a 30-day notice to raise rents to Mischief. It has to be a 60-day notice. And then you send them a notice to raise rents, and then they fight you saying, oh, we think the rent that you're raising to is too high. Can you send us comparables to justify it? So my response is, here's a 30-day notice.
That's like company policy.
30-day notice, here's one comp in the own building, you figure out the comp, or they can get the F out.
Yep.
Because my proposed rents are still below market. Because I put tenants back in these houses for $750. Some of these houses are now rent for $1,300 next door, and they're paying $850 now. So my rents are cheap. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, she had a question right here.
So I'm just gonna say I beg to differ. Not all Section 8 people are like that, because I was on Section 8, and I had 3 children, and I had 2 jobs, and I had money to pay my portion, and I decided it was time for me to buy my own house because I was paying somebody $850 a month for you to be in my business.
So don't misunderstand what I'm trying to say, and I'm going to use me as an example. I will never say everybody is a bad person. I'm running odds. I'm running odds,
And that
right?
was what somebody told me,
If
it's
I-
like
You're 1% of the 1%. Okay, I'm running odds. My 10%.
Just give me a second about it. You know, maybe I'm old. I am
That's confidence.
old. And maybe I'm cynical. But in the old days, they used to say, when there was a yellow book, the yellow book rule was the government ought not provide any service that you can get yourself in the yellow book. And I always thought that was a pretty good rule. But in the real estate business, after we work hard and do all the things that we're supposed to do, the government, one way, shape, or form, is our biggest competitor. They'll rent the apartment cheaper. They will subsidize it. They'll just do everything they can to take your tenant and give them a better deal than you can give them. And when I look at Section 8 or any of the many programs I've seen through the years, I remember the 235 program, they get into a house for $200. And all these things sound really great. But what about the poor schnook who's next door and needs a 10% down payment in order for somebody to buy his house? The government is not our friend in the real estate business. They're our competitor. And you have to understand that. And when you comply with the Section 8 rules, in the end, you're lowering the price of rents. You're not improving your situation, you're improving somebody else's situation. And that might be nice in the total scheme of things. But I look at this thing purely as how much money Henry can make. And I just don't see the government through Section 8 or any other programs being my friend or helping me or even trying to help me. You know, here I am paying $1,000 taxes when the house next door isn't paying anything. Here I am, beating on somebody for my rent, and here Section 8 is paying my neighbor's rent. I mean, it's not a level playing field. And I'm probably cynical after all these years. But I don't look at anything the government does as helping you and I as investors. I see them hurting us in most cases. And again, it's cynicism coming through.
Just
To balance.
go ahead. Well, to answer your question, I think it is how do you get them to reach out? Just put it in your head that you accept Section 8. They'll answer the question. You don't have to reach out to Section 8 to get that advertisement, I guess. So, voucher holders will reach out to you.
At that point, I don't know where to go to get the government to pay or.
It all comes to you.
Inspection.
It all comes to you.
They'll bring you the voucher, the paperwork.
They bring you all
No,
that.
I think he's talking about how are you talking about how tenants come to him? Because he's talking about how he gets approved to be a Section 8 landlord.
Right.
Through the tenant.
Well, first you need a Section 8 voucher from you.
So you don't have
Did
to
you
do.
want to chime in? I know there's a lot of negative around Section 8
It is,
from a landlord's
yeah.
perspective. I think that there might be a success story to counter this.
For me, Section 8 works. For me, I love Section 8. I mean, I've been sitting here tonight, I've gotten 6 text messages asking, do I accept Section 8? Yes. I agree with what they're saying. You gotta understand, there are 2 separate things of Section 8. There's full Section 8, and then there's partial Section 8, which Henry touched base on, where Section 8 pays a portion of your rent, and then the tenant pays whatever portion there. For me, I don't accept it. I don't accept partial Section 8 because it's an absolute headache. Because every quarter, that tenant has to turn paperwork into the state, and the state has to look over the paperwork, has to see what their income is, see if there's a change in their income, whether their income went up or went down. At that time, they changed their Section 8, how much money they pay. I only deal with full Section 8 tenants, and I love them. I don't have an issue with mine. To answer your question, you think I would post it. You can contact the state of Michigan. There's different branches downtown in Lansing that you can contact. I can give you a few names after this. But you can get on there and you can just ask them that you want to get Section 8 approved, and they're going to send you a piece of paper of things that they're going to look at. You go through, make sure those things are done. Once you get a tenant, like Mike says, that has the stove, the refrigerator, and then it gets approved, you know, that Section 8 person moves in. I 100% agree with Mike in the aspect of charging a security deposit and first month's rent, because he is correct again. You will not get your money for at least 90 days. So if you move a tenant in on July 1st, that tenant is staying in your property July, August, and if it works out lovely, you'll get a check on, if they move in July, they'll be in there all of July, all of August, and you'll get a check September 3rd for July, August, and September. In a perfect world. After that, every month on the 3rd, it's like clockwork. It gets deposited in your bank account. But at the end of the day, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and say what kind of landlord you want to be. And if you want to be a landlord that wants to do Section 8 or wants to not do Section 8, it's what you want to do. And for me, I have quite a few Section 8 houses. I like it. Do I have other properties that are not Section 8? Yeah, of course. But you have to have your T's crossed, your I's dotted, and you have to have money in there, because at least 90 days, you're not getting any money. And it could be, Mike, how many times have you gone over 90 days?
4 or 5.
4 or 5
Out of
times.
those 4 or 5, 3 of them, it like disappeared.
Yeah, I've gone 120 days before I've gotten one check. But that's when I get the check is for the last 4
They
months.
pay up. They
They pay up.
From the letter, from the time you get the letter that
Yeah,
they
from the
accepted,
letter and
they pay
everything
from
like
there
that.
forward. So it's a good deal.
It's a great deal if you know how to navigate through Section 8. If you know what you're doing and know how to navigate it, it's a great, for me, it's been great. For them, it might be a nightmare. But at the end of the day, it's what you want as a landlord.
Aaron, if I do this right, I got 2 comments, a question, and a follow-up question. The first comment would be, you don't qualify, but the house qualifies. Yes. And you just have to give, like, where do you send the payment to me kind of information, I think. But you're not off the hook qualifying the tenant, like I think at least 1 or 2 people said. Anybody who kind of stand in line, end up getting a voucher after a couple of years when they opened up or whatever, but you still need to qualify that person according to your criteria. But with regard to your house qualifying, is the process the hoops to jump through? Is there a very well documented procedure these days that says do this, this, and this, and you'll be okay?
They do. They bring. So when your tenant comes, when you run that ad, or whenever you accept that tenant, they normally, if it's a Section 8 person and they have their voucher, they'll ask you right up front, do you accept Section 8? You say yes or no. Once you say yes, then they'll say, okay, I'd like to come see the house. You show them the house. They say, I have a voucher for this amount, for this. Understand, they're going to say, I have a voucher for $1,400 up to a 4-bedroom house because I have such and such kids. I've got 6 kids. Well, then you have to do the math because you're only allowed so many kids per room, no mixed sexes, blah, 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 and you got to be responsible for that. So once you get all that done, then after all that happens, they go look at it, they bring you all this paperwork. They say, hey, here's all the paperwork, and they hand it to you. And just as he said, you have to fill out, one said, you have to fill out where the payment comes to. You gotta have an EIN, you gotta have a social security number, whatever you do for your normal taxes, you put that number in there. Once you do that, you fill all that information out, it goes out, they will schedule the inspection with you, they will schedule all that stuff. Let me back up right there. This refers back to what kind of landlord you want to be. If you are a landlord that wants the nicest house in whatever neighborhood you're in, and you want to take care of that neighborhood, and you want to take care of that house, that's all that's expected of you. Truly. I think railings, it's a very basic inspection. If you are on the other side of the world, which we really don't have those here, then you probably should not be part of Section 8. Because you will get ripped up one side and down the next. And they will walk through a fine-tooth comb at that point.
And they'll flag you.
Totally.
They will flag you.
Yes.
So like, not to interrupt my.
No, you're good. Go ahead.
If you want to be, cut to the chase, if you want to be a dirtbag slumlord, dude, the state of Michigan in a heartbeat will flag you, and it is like the second coming of Jesus Christ if you want to become.
Yes.
After you get flagged, like it is like a hole that it is so hard to get out of. Like at that point, it's like, do you even really want to become that? So it's like that's where you have to decide what type of tenant you or landlord you want to be. Do you want to be the have the nicest house, or do you want to float that gray area? Because as soon as you get flagged, it's tough.
The sheet that they have that they're checking, if you can snag that from, pay them $20 or something, snag that sheet. If we could ever get that sheet, that'd be a perfect sheet because that sheet really goes through, and that sheet really goes through and tells you how to be a landlord. I mean, it's basic good stuff.
I have that resource available. I have that sheet.
Well, if you can get one of those to her,
I'll get you one. I have that sheet.
Yeah,
it's essentially a little bit more than a checklist, Mike. When a tenant moves into your property, you should do a property checklist. A what?
A move-in
checklist. It's essentially that, just like one more page. But I have it.
Yeah, I can get that to her.
Yes, that's.
No, I'm saying I support the state. I'm an IT consultant, and if you guys say it's just horrific, it makes me want to call the governor tonight. I mean, I never heard, because I work with people, my nonprofit for Section 8, and tell them what they have to do, pay their bills, they go through my budget, I tell the state. So I'm just floored with all this. And I do report back and I do tell them. So if it's something you guys know, I'm sorry right now, I'm gonna speak down and over about it.
I don't think it's that. I think it's more of, we're coming out of a time now, because I'm truly seeing a clean up right now. So I tell you these things because it's real dangerous for someone that's depending on money, that really needs that money to fix that house, that really needs that. They ain't got 20 houses. They're not managing houses like him or me, or have houses like these guys, or him, so they're depending on that money. And if something gets snared up there,
That's what I want to
it
find
drowns
out,
them.
to
It would
figure
drown.
out what's there, because I talk to them like almost every week.
Oh, you could come spend a day in my office any day, find out.
Yeah, because I go to Lansing and I talk to them, like, why is it having all these problems on Section 8, call me, or
Especially-
they come in, I'm like, I just do paperwork, we go. So I don't see what you guys see, but I don't have houses for it, but I am gonna get a house for Section 8.
It's two pieces. There's the process, every landlord knows this. There's the person you meet in the interview and application process versus the person who's in your house 6 months later. And oftentimes, they're not the same. And so, again, just like we talked about preventative maintenance, and I want to honor, I'm going to be real. I got to say this, you're in a room of landlords who are here to talk business. I also happen to be a pastor. So the part of it is like the humanity of this, that Section 8 provides an opportunity for people in transition, need a springboard to another step of life. That's legit, that's important, it's real, we value that. We also understand, we're talking to landlords, that after all is said and done, and they're bettering themselves, if you don't know some of these preventative steps when you're screening them, some of these preventative steps when you are making the hard call and saying, yes, I have to charge that deposit up front. And you cannot be sitting there with your heart on your sleeve and saying, oh, I get it, I understand, I remember when, because unfortunately, that's just the nature of how to run a business. And that's what we want to help you to be better equipped at doing, because when all's said and done, I do believe this room is full of, you say, it keeps coming up, what kind of landlord do you want to be? I believe the people here are landlords who want to be good landlords and have stable, consistent revenue. And if that's the strategy, if that's the way you want to play the game, I heard during the NFL draft, they were talking about, hey, the AFC is a much stronger passing league within the NFL. You got big time quarterbacks. That's how you play the game if you're in the AFC. It's run. I'm sorry, it's pass. If you're NFC, you got a much stronger run game. You got to decide which team you want to be on. You got to know how you want to play this game of landlording. And if that's what you're going to do, if you're going to be a running team, then you stack your offensive line a certain way. You build your team a certain way. If you know you're going to be doing Section 8, you know your administrative paperwork better be exceptional. If you suck at administrative paperwork, if you know you don't really want to go through a checklist like that, that's not how you want to play the game. Plain and simple.
I think one big thing, Danny, is you've had 6 texts since you've been sitting here tonight about do you accept Section 8? Where are you advertising these houses to get 6 texts in 1 hour?
So, I mean, Facebook's huge, but I've been in this long enough. Word of mouth is big. I have enough rentals who my renters do my work for me essentially. So a renter will pass it on to so and so, and they'll just text me out of the blue and ask. And yeah, of course I accept it, and then I start asking the question. Yes, I accept it. How much is your voucher for? Do you have a job? If you do, how much are you working? How much is Section 8 covering? Well, you have to get personal with these people on Section 8. And if you can't do that, then if you can't ask the hard question, you gotta be out.
So, out of this, Danny, you run a successful Section 8 business.
I feel like I do.
What are some of the biggest takeaways, like suggestion, first month's rent deposit, so you don't end up in the pickle that he was in?
So, not to cut you off.
Yep, I'm curious.
By law, you can only charge deposit.
Okay.
Asking for first month's rent from Section 8 is against the law. You actually can get in trouble You know, you can get blacklisted, you can go to jail because it's fraud. Because Section 8 is actually supposed to pay first month's rent, second month's rent, third month's, you know, they pay your rent. What I do, so if I have a Section 8 house that I would rent out for $800, by law, the max you can charge on a deposit is 1.5 times your rent. So instead of charging $1,600 like what Mike might have charged, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, I would charge $1,200. I would charge 1 month and a half, because that's by law what I can charge. So before any tenant moves in, month and a half, your rent's $1,000. I want $1,500 to move in on Saturday. And before that, the house, of course, is got to pass, depending on the house where it's located. If you have a house in the city of Flint, not only do you have to pass Section 8 approval, you also have to pass the city of Flint in rental inspection.
Well, you don't have to pass, you just have to pay the money, and then you're going to get an inspection.
You got, I mean, the city of Flint is getting much better at doing the inspections. Do I like the city of Flint's inspection? But that's another topic. But again, those are different areas, different areas. Mike, he's in Beecher. I'm in Beecher. They don't charge, they don't have a rental inspection. You just have to pass Section 8 approved inspection. And that only comes by the inspector from the city, or from Lansing, who will come down, inspect your property, and then flag it if it's not right, and you have to make corrections and go through.
So let me make sure I'm really clear, because I want anybody to send me to jail. I don't think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
So, when we do our paperwork, in our paperwork, we divulge what we charge them. We tell Section 8.
Yeah.
I'm charging this, and I'm charging this. And we write in there, because everything is documented in my business. We write in there that once Section 8 picks up rent, you no longer get charged rent. And my issue was from what I said earlier, and Section 8 lost their paperwork and it come back on it. That is yet, and I tell Section 8, it's in their paperwork that I'm saying that. Have you not been in jail yet? Taken there yet? So, I don't know if there's but it's documentation is what I'm getting at.
And let me ask you this question, because if you can do that, like, I will start doing that, because I do like that chunk. When you charge first month, a deposit first month's rent, and you give that information to Section 8 and let them know, when you get your first payment, whether it's 3 months or 4 months down the line, do they hold the first month's rent?
No, normally they give it to us, and we've called them. Like, I've been in several conversations with them, because obviously I'm not in my office. Everybody knows. My girls are, but when I've been in those conversations, and those conversations have been, listen, we charged them this, you give us this check, what do you want us to do with this month's rent? Well, just apply it. Don't send it back to us. We're like, okay. So then we write it out that it's applied. We go into the computer program and we write an actual full description in there that explains it, is what we do. So
they almost have a credit on file.
Yeah, it's a credit on file.
Yeah, they would always have a credit on
Well,
file.
not always, because then Section 8, when they get through their paperwork, it does. They straighten it out. But yeah, they don't not straighten it out, I promise you. But my point is this documentation. If you don't have that documentation and you don't write that documentation down, then you are a sitting duck for taking advantage of the system, and they will crucify you.
And that's part of what we're saying. If you want to play that game, be prepared to be exceptional in your documentation, your reporting. Be willing to spend time on the phone to reconcile things if it has to be done. If it's the thought that it's just literally sending some papers and money just shows up in my bank account, it's not a set it and forget it. Ms. Little had a question here.
Well, my question is not related to Section 8. I want to figure out how to move my property into traveling nurses.
Airbnb?
Not Airbnb, traveling nurses.
I understand that. but you actually put on the Airbnb or the VRBO websites for 30-day minimum. And then you just jack the rate to $2,000 instead of $1,000 or whatever.
What's her name actually went to the hospital and she posted it on the board. She wasn't super successful with that, and it was really hard to get into that, and I think they're challenging it somehow now.
Yeah, so I have a client that has like 20 travel nurses renting from him, and he got them all from Airbnb.
So the question was, how does she transition from traditional rental into something that's rented to traveling nurses? Some of you may or may not know. So what we're talking about now are alternative ways to find tenants. Section 8 tenants are an alternative way to source tenants that have a different type of revenue structure. Traveling nurses oftentimes, because they have contracts and they're short-term, 12 weeks, they're not coming to the city like a normal person who's renting a house for a 12-month lease. They're coming in for 3 months. So they know they're gonna pay, all bills paid, maybe furnished, and they're gonna pay a premium for that. So the example that was just given, so this is another way to play the game, if that's what you wanna do. That if you had a house that normally rents for $1,000, but because you furnished it, you have postured it this way, you may be able to charge $2,000 per month. And you know, the check structure is different. You're usually dealing with a caliber of professional that's not going to trash the place. There's no guarantee for anybody. But it's another way the game can be played, and maybe over time we'll discuss some other areas. There's ways that people who deal with the insurance companies, somebody has a claim on their home, and their home's getting fixed on for 5, 6 months, 7 months, and they need a place to stay. Instead of paying $150 a month at a hotel, they're like, hey, you have a house, you normally rent it for $1,200, but you got it furnished, this, that, and the other, utilities, great, we'll write you a check for $2,800 a month to house this person, because it's cheaper for us to put them in your house for 3 months or 6 months. They'll give you a nice deposit, they'll pay you on time. It's a different way to play the game. And so that's a very good question.
So,
And then my other question.
one quick thing about Airbnb and Hoverground. So Airbnb and VRBO, you can hook them together and the calendars will sync. There's another lady up north next door to my cottage in Houghton Lake, and she has had a lot of success running hers through a website called Evolve, which I've never actually even used Evolve to look or rent a property on it before, but her Airbnb is almost 90%, it's, you know, a short-term rental is also 100% full all summer long next door to my cottage using Evolve only. And she said the fees are less.
I just seen an app that actually takes, there's like 5 of them out there. It'll take every one of them and it'll sync it to one calendar for you.
Yeah, the calendars will sync.
Look for apps. If you guys are into that, you gotta look for the
And
apps.
another thing with these travel nurses is the guy that has like 20 of them, he was doing the 12-week contract and was never sending his cleaning lady in. And he came in after 12 weeks and he had a completely trashed Airbnb. And this guy should be like an interior designer. He puts these things together, they're beautiful. And his thing was trashed and it cost him like 12 grand to put his unit back together. So his recommendation is do a minimal of, every 4 weeks, make sure they're paying the cleaning fee. And you can charge them right through Airbnb's website.
And then, so my other question on top of that would be, if I had a 3-bedroom house, could I rent each bedroom out and charge, let's say, $700 a bedroom?
Yes, you can, and there's actually a market for that. I cannot remember her name. She rented an office from me. She works for GHS, and they're constantly looking for bedrooms. I don't know if they call them halfway houses, or what the proper term would be. Down the street from me on Flushing Road, there's one. It's called Civil Manor Office Building. That's been completely converted to where they rent single-room offices, and sometimes these guys are sharing a room. And most of the tenants have a payee, so they get SSI, but they're not equipped to take care of their own funds. So your funds actually don't even come from the tenant; it's coming from the attorney's trustee, payee, or all different circumstances. And it's a great business model. But if you're going to do it, I would do it with at least a 4 or a 5-bedroom house, because it's all economies of scale. You got one cleaning fee, one lawn, one trash bill, one water bill. And the more bedrooms you have to offset those expenses, the better off you're going to be.
And you said it's called Civil Manor?
it's a Civic Manor or Civil Manor? Civic Manor office building has been converted to one. It's just an example of
Oh,
one.
I thought this was the building that you're saying.
You say GHS?
Yeah,
There's tons.
Genesee Health Systems can probably, if you reach, they have sections. You were here? All right, go ahead.
So this is a new question. So if a tenant moves out and they do not give you a forwarding address, what is the best way to handle this security deposit?
Becomes yours.
Well, they've got three days to notify. If they don't, you don't have any obligation under the Security Deposit Act.
So the
So you're
correct,
free.
the way I was trained,
Ignore us.
the way I was trained is you fill out your inventory checklist like you're supposed to, and you email the accounting, and I'm assuming they're not getting the deposit back. You email the accounting of the deposit to the address of the apartment to rely on it to be forwarded through the mail. They probably also didn't set up mail forwarding, so when you are over there showing the apartment or cleaning it up, you just take that mail and you throw it in the folder as proof that you sent it because you have a delivered piece of mail to them because they didn't deliver a mail forwarding address.
Well, but you do it, so you send it so that it goes to them and it comes back. And it shows no forwarding address, and then you're covered because you've done your part.
Most of the time it's in the mailbox.
I understand that process, but I was just wondering what your answer was. Like,
I will tell you.
They do nothing.
If it's in your lease, that they have to give it to you within 3 days, and also in your lease, that they and you only accept electronic emails, basically. You can only communicate through emails. If you have those two things in your lease, and you don't have an email from them in your system within 3 days giving you you do not have to worry about it.
I actually lost a security deposit lawsuit over that because they actually did not provide me a forwarding address. And she had her dad come to court as her witness that he told my assistant the address, and I was in the room, he did not. Lied right straight through his teeth, ruled my favor, and I had to pay their $500 deposit back and $200 of court costs. So that's genius, electronic. You have to notify us of your address electronically only, in writing electronically. So if they can't provide proof of that email, it never happened, and I would have not lost $700.
So that, I've actually been in court and that saved me. The only other thing that saved me, which I'll add to that because it's a really good one, that just saved me the other day with a torturous tenant, was we had them sign a complete separate piece of paper. Other than the inventory checklist, it's completely separate. And it says that they accept this property and everything in it as fit to live in at the point of them moving in on this date.
But it brings up an interesting question, you know?
That's a
With the different municipalities that want to do some type of building inspection to the property during the term of the tenancy, I think we all in this room know that the deposit that you're given isn't your money. You're only holding that in trust for the tenant. And you really are not allowed to do anything with it until the tenant is moved out. So what happens when the building inspector comes in and says, well, there's a window broken, you gotta fix it? Is he taking your rights under the Security Deposit Act and trashing them? Does he have a right to ask you to fix that window before the end of the tenancy? Because the Security Deposit Act is certainly a state act as opposed to a local act. And I think that a lot of these municipalities, a lot of these municipalities don't care one way, shape, or form about your rights under the Security Deposit Act. We've got to jump through these hoops, like what happens at the end of 3 days if they don't give it to you, or if they contested it after 20 days. But apparently, the building department doesn't really care about the hoops that we have to jump through. They're really trumped on our rights as property owners when they ask you to do something that you don't feel is yours to do, that it's the tenant's responsibility. You'll notice in all the building inspection ordinances, there's no individual responsibility for the tenants, period. The only time I've ever seen any rights is after they've been in the house 30 days if they have bugs that are their bugs. But with that exception, they expect you to make the repairs. Sorry.
So I would hope, I'm pretty sure our lease has it, I know my lease has it. My lease has that if they do damages, including broken windows while they're in the residence, that becomes, we repair it, that becomes additional rent. And you add that shit to their statement that says, we repaired the window for your lease agreement, you're being charged for it. And that should, and they can do whatever they want, if the lease says it. If the state or the inspector says you gotta fix it and charge them for it. And, but
The first money you receive after that covers damages, utilities, late fees, all that kind of stuff, or being applied to the rent. Then later on, if you're evicting for whatever amount, it's all rent, not damages.
That right there, you guys better have in your lease where that rent goes. Because if it doesn't say
that statement should be
the
in
first
everybody's
part of the rent goes to back bills, repairs being done that you broke, if it doesn't say that in that lease, then that person stands up in that courtroom and says, Judge, I paid rent. I don't get a late fee because I paid rent. You don't get to hit that like we all normally do. So that, you might want to make sure that's.
What happens if they?
I hope you guys are taking notes, because this is a lot of little things you might want to tweak in your lease.
Go
ahead, Dan.
Oh, her.
So I have a question. Like my tenant, she moved in May of last year, and I didn't have rodents when she moved in. And then,
You do now. They're your fault.
and that's what she said. So I ended up having to call the ordinance, and I'm paying the ordinance bill, and it wasn't an infestation until November. So who is really responsible for all of those?
What your lease says.
It's supposed to fall under your lease, right? And your lease says that they're responsible for all roads, so on, so on, so on. Every person in this room knows that what happens in the wintertime.
They move in.
They move in every winter. So they're not there now, but they are there in the wintertime. In that situation, they were there. They were in the field, they were still there. Now they're in there. I have been beat up by the judge so many times with that, and I am starting to get to the point where no matter what, I'm just sticking to it and I'm just sucking up what the judge said. When it comes to bugs, that's a different situation. Because bugs, you can prove if they were there or not, or because you can have a guy come in and you can test that. We're working on getting a dog because, which we don't see, I don't know what you see right now, but bed bugs. For a time there, we were seeing a lot of bed bugs, and then now it's kind of downplayed, but we're getting a lot of fleas coming back and a lot of those. When you can actually get dogs to sniff those and certify that there was none of those there. So we're actually trying to get a dog that because I own a dog. Yeah, I own dogs for certain reasons, and we're trying to get a dog. There is one out of Detroit. He's $250 an hour, I think is what he is. But they give you a certificate that says there's nothing in that house. So then you go to that judge, because I know you get drugged into court over this, because I know I do. That there was nothing there. Here's a certificate that the dog went through a business. And then it falls on. It's one more thing added to. We spray between every single house. Every time it's empty, we spray, no matter what.
Whether you think they're there or not.
Whether you think they're there or not, we spray.
So how much does it cost to spray?
How much does it cost to me? You, I don't know. It costs me a fraction, I'm sure, but I buy this stuff because no one's there. You don't have to be licensed to do it because it's an empty house. And it has to be empty for, I think the rule is 2 weeks or 3 weeks. It has to be empty.
So you spray as soon as they move out.
So I sprayed 2 today, and I buy it in bulk, and it costs $200 and something, and it's really expensive, but it goes a long way. It's just 2 ounces per gallon. But it's a kill everything, no matter what, and you absolutely want to wear a mask and gloves. Do not, because it goes right through your skin. Do not want to get that.
You need a license though, don't you?
If it's habitable or if it's for commercial use, you need a license. At the point of being vacant, there is zero use on it because you don't know what you're doing with it yet.
Then you said you have to wait how long?
It says that you gotta follow the directions. The stuff that I have, I think, is 2 weeks that I have to wait, and that's common practice.
I was sued one time on Holtzlander in Mount Morris Township there, because we had sprayed our house to get rid of whatever kind of bugs they had. And the neighbors said that when we sprayed our house, the bugs went to their house. And they wanted me to
That's a real
exterminate
thing.
their house.
That's a real thing.
That's crazy.
We got a question.
Can you tell me your name of the spray, where you get
I
it?
can't. Sorry.
A location, you ask someone else?
I couldn't even tell you right now. My best bet is to go to your local place and ask them for stuff that kills everything. And remember, you have to read between the lines, guys, because that person can tell you what his license allows him to tell you, right? They tried to get me to buy something else today, and I wanted the stuff that I use because the EPA, I guess this year, came in and said that we can't spray that stuff that I've always been using for the last 20 years. You're not allowed to spray it throughout the house because they're afraid people are going to come in on the house now. Well, I know we don't allow guys to come in, so I'm safe from that. But just saying, you gotta figure it out for yourself. But I saw.
Not even a store, a website, anything?
I know, right? He's on video. I get there.
What is everything? What do you mean by killing everything?
It literally kills everything.
Ants.
It kills everything. I'm not kidding. It kills everything.
So is it like that old machine that you put in?
No. It's a spray.
Okay.
It's a spray. You have to be, in order to spray that stuff, like, you have to be licensed to spray that stuff in any commercial place or anywhere anybody lives. You have to be licensed to spray.
Is it added to somebody else?
So,
Is it added to someone just?
It's
Added.
If there's someone in the house, probably.
yeah, it's someone living there now.
What I hope a lot of people are capturing tonight, some people may have said, Section 8, I don't do that anyway. Or maybe you say, I do it all the time. Whatever the nuances, I hope you're hearing a consistent vein of there's a lot that can be done preventatively, whether it's with your furnace, your hot water heater. There's a lot that can be done preventatively. Before you move a tenant in your house, there's a lot that you can do preventatively by what you have in your lease to make sure that, again, the person you typically meet at the point of application, everything's all good, everything is great, I'm gonna take care of your house, oh, I appreciate you so much. That's noble. You know, when someone made the distinction earlier, it's different when maybe you've got a lot more properties and maybe you can buffer some losses a little bit easier. But I remember we had our first couple of houses. I'm telling you, I'm looking at that application, I'm gonna drive by your current location. I'm gonna probably set up discreetly and intentionally, hey, I'll bring the app to you to get it all closed out because I'm seeing how you live. Because you want to tell me what you're going to do in my house, but your house now is trashed? I need to know that now. These are preventative things. Use some wisdom with that, you know. These are preventative things that matter, regardless of which way you play the game, that make a big difference.
All right, before we close, we just got 50-50. Last four is 4922, 4922.
Are you lucky, Mr. Patterson?
Winner, chicken dinner. 4922. We have no, we got a winner. All right. Thanks, Kevin. All right. I'll let Renard close us.
Well, I want to thank you all for your patience, your great questions, your listening ears. I hope that you're picking up, even while you're picking up answers to questions, maybe a person or two in here that you feel that much more comfortable connecting with, even outside of our monthly meetings, so that you can ask questions, know that there's almost like a subconscious support group. Feel like, you know, we need that in this business. For those of you that are here and this is your first time, or you're now re-engaging or taking that next step to become part of the GLA, we welcome you. We're glad that you're here. We're going to ask that before you depart, see any one of us, any of the board members, or especially Miss Amanda here. We'd love to make sure that we formally get you enrolled as part of the GLA membership. And with that being said, we do not have a meeting in July. And so we want you to make sure you enjoy July. You're still able to email and give us a call, but at least make sure you mark it off on your calendar. Don't want you to show up here next month and wonder where we are. But we will see you again in August. Is there anything else? All right, have a wonderful night. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. Hey, what's going on, Brandon? Long time no see, man. I didn't even know you were there. Yeah, man. This is what I do now, man. Oh, I love
I didn't know that. I didn't know you like HVAC.
Oh, yeah. So, like I said, I really wanted to get strictly into HVAC. You know, with GHS, I was doing everything. Moving furniture, whatever the case may be. But, like I said, I love doing HVAC, so I have to break off to where I can focus just on that. So, I love it, man. Like I said, I'm just a small crew, you know, and that's another reason why I don't do as much of the service work. I'm strictly trying to focus on install. Yeah, but of course, any company that does install work still has to do a certain level of service because they have to offer a warranty for the stuff they install. Yeah, man, it's good seeing you.
This is my buddy. It just replaced something on last minute.
Now see, what would save you, not you, continue to replace those filters. Because all it does is overheat. That filter gets clogged up, and now that's cool. Just like buying a fan from Family Dollar against the wall. There's no airflow, so it's just going to burn up. And there's like three things that burn. That overheats because it doesn't have airflow cooling it down. So,
Yeah, so I was actually